the silent psychological crash of the narcissist, the breakdown you'll never see. There is a particular kind of collapse that haunts every narcissist, a quiet implosion that few ever witness and fewer still understand. While most discussions around narcissism revolve around their explosive rage, their venomous smear campaigns, or their desperate hoovering attempts, there exists another kind of storm within them, one that moves without sound. Psychologists call this the narcissistic collapse, but it is, in essence, a silent psychological crash. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is internal, hidden, suffocating, and it terrifies the narcissist more than anything else. According to clinical psychologist Dr. Eleanor Greenberg, narcissists exist in a state of psychic fragility. Their entire sense of self is built on illusions. When those illusions crumble, the collapse begins. What looks like calm on the outside, an eerie stillness, even a smug composure, is often the psychological equivalent of a house burning behind closed doors. Narcissists cannot allow this fire to be seen. To them, exposure is annihilation. Vulnerability equals death. So they do what they've always done. They perform. They project an illusion of control, happiness, and even triumph, while inside, their psyche fractures under the unbearable pressure of emptiness. When you walk away from a narcissist, the world may believe they have won. They seem poised, unbothered. They often preemptively poison the narrative, painting you as the villain, planting whispers among friends, colleagues, even family. Psychologists describe this as reputation protection, a defensive mechanism designed to safeguard their fragile ego from exposure. They appear serene, even joyful, posting smiling pictures, flaunting a new relationship, crafting a narrative of moving on. But this is not healing. This is camouflage. Behind that curated normalcy is chaos. Inside, they are unraveling. Why does this collapse happen so violently? Because for the narcissist, abandonment is not merely a breakup. It is psychological extinction. As trauma therapists often note, narcissists do not experience sadness the way emotionally integrated adults do. They experience ego death, a shattering of the false identity they've spent their lives constructing. They do not have an autonomous sense of self. They borrow identity through others. Every word of admiration, every approving gaze, every ounce of attention becomes the scaffolding for their existence. When you leave, you are not just walking away from a relationship, you are pulling the plug on their life support. To the outside world, it may seem exaggerated to say that one person could hold such power over another's inner world. But in the case of narcissists, psychologists like Dr. Sam Vaknin explain that the narcissist's self is an illusion maintained through external validation. Without a source of reflection, what psychologists call narcissistic supply, the narcissist collapses inward. Their grandiosity deflates like a dying star. Their once confident tone becomes brittle. Their anger simmers beneath forced smiles. And yet, they will never admit this descent, because doing so would mean facing the ultimate horror, their own insignificance. During this silent crash, they withdraw. You may notice their social media suddenly quiets. The constant bragging fades. Friends may say, "They've gone silent, maybe they're healing." But healing is not in their vocabulary. What's really happening, psychologists observe, is a covert form of narcissistic hibernation. They retreat to reconstruct their mask, to find new sources of validation, to sedate the inner panic with illusions of control. They are not mourning you, they are mourning the loss of their mirror, the person who once reflected their false perfection back at them. For the victim, this phase can be confusing. You may wonder, why aren't they showing remorse? Why do they seem okay while I'm the one shattered? But understand, what looks like peace is psychological denial. The narcissist's silence is not strength. It is paralysis. Their psyche is at war. And your pain, while raw and visible, is actually a sign of health. You are feeling. You are processing. Psychologists emphasize that grief is a necessary passage through loss, while the narcissist's repression is a descent into deeper delusion. So what can the survivor do? The first step, as trauma therapists often teach, is to stop interpreting the narcissist's silence as serenity. It is not serenity, it is suppression. Their calm is the calm of a drowning man beneath the surface, still for a moment before panic returns. Recognize this for what it is and redirect your gaze inward. Your work now is not to decode their collapse but to rebuild your wholeness. Reflection, therapy, mindfulness, journaling. These are not cliches. They are acts of psychological rescue. As psychologist Dr. Judith Herman reminds us, recovery from relational trauma begins with reclaiming narrative control, telling your own story after years of being written by someone else. The narcissist's silent crash is their reckoning, a private purgatory that you will never see. And perhaps that is mercy, because beneath the mask, beneath the rage, beneath the image of strength, lies a childlike terror of being nothing at all. And for once, that truth is theirs to face, not yours to fix. When the narcissist begins to spiral into this hidden darkness, what looks like apathy or arrogance on the surface is, in truth, psychic disintegration. Psychologists often describe this moment as a fracture in the false self. The narcissist's carefully constructed mask, crafted from charm, dominance, and borrowed validation, begins to crack. Behind that mask lies a terrified child whose sense of worth has always been dependent on others. The silence, the drawn curtains, the bottles on the table. These are not acts of serenity or independence. They are evidence of collapse, a desperate attempt to quiet the unbearable noise of inner shame and identity panic. Dr. Heinz Kohut, one of the pioneers in the study of narcissism, wrote that when the narcissistic supply is withdrawn, the individual experiences what he called a narcissistic injury, a kind of psychological hemorrhage. What makes it so cruel is that the narcissist cannot interpret this pain as sadness or loss. Instead, they experience it as humiliation, as exposure, as proof that they are not who they pretend to be. The shame burns through their psyche like acid. They cannot face it, so they project it outward, blame others, or try to numb it with distractions, substances, or new relationships. Anything to avoid the one thing they dread most, self-confrontation. And this is where the victim often gets confused, because from the outside, their collapse looks eerily similar to indifference. You might scroll through social media and see them traveling, posting, smiling with new people, or appearing completely unaffected. But psychologists emphasize this is compensatory behavior. They are not celebrating freedom, they are escaping annihilation. Dr. Ramani Durvasula describes this as ego patchwork, the frantic stitching together of a broken identity using whatever external materials they can find. Another lover, another audience, another source of validation. It is a manic performance of wholeness built upon a foundation of internal chaos. Yet beneath this facade, a battle rages. Shame turns to rage, and rage turns inward when there is no one left to control. This is the narcissist's private purgatory. Some externalize this rage, lashing out at new partners, friends, or even strangers in a desperate bid to restore the illusion of power. Others implode quietly, descending into depressive states, addictions, or obsessive self-pity. Psychologists recognize this as a collapse of the grandiose self, when their usual mechanisms of control no longer work and reality begins to leak through the cracks. They are forced, if only briefly, to encounter the truth of their emptiness, and they cannot tolerate it. What's tragic and dangerous is that during this phase they may reach out again, not because they love you, but because they are drowning. Hoovering, as psychologists call it, is often the narcissist's last-ditch effort to resuscitate their fragile ego by pulling you back into their orbit. They will promise change, speak of reflection, or mirror your language of healing. But understand, this is not self-awareness. It is psychic survival instinct. Their psyche is gasping for oxygen, and your empathy is the air they crave. This is why trauma experts caution survivors to recognize that compassion does not equal responsibility. You can feel sorrow for their suffering without reopening the door to your own. For the survivor, this is perhaps the most critical point in the healing journey, the stage where illusion meets reality. Because as psychologists note, what keeps victims emotionally tethered is often empathy addiction, the compulsive urge to rescue, understand, or fix the narcissist. This compulsion stems from the very conditioning the narcissist instilled in you, the belief that your worth is tied to your ability to soothe chaos. But in recovery, you must unlearn this reflex. True healing begins when you allow the narcissist's crash to belong to them. It is not your role to bear witness to their undoing. It is your role to rebuild what was undone within you. Therapists often guide survivors toward what's called reality-based compassion. This means holding empathy without delusion, acknowledging that the narcissist's suffering is real, but also recognizing that their suffering does not justify harm. You can mourn the person you thought they were, even as you accept who they truly are. This act of differentiation, psychologists say, is a key marker of post-traumatic growth. It reclaims your boundaries, your perspective, and your emotional autonomy. And as the narcissist sits in their silent darkness, curtains drawn, ego bleeding, mask cracking, you will begin to understand the profound irony of it all. You were never the broken one. You were simply the mirror that reflected too much truth. The collapse they hide so desperately is not your closure to witness, but your liberation to embrace. Because while they retreat into illusion, your task is to re-enter reality, to rebuild your sense of self not through their gaze, but through your own. What happens after the illusion fades, after the narcissist has successfully convinced the world, and perhaps even themselves, that they've moved on? Psychologists often describe this phase as the hidden aftermath, the period where the narcissist is no longer performing for the audience, but quietly battling their own reflection. Beneath the curated perfection lies a silent battlefield of fear, envy, and deep internal disarray. Dr. Eleanor Greenberg, a psychologist specializing in narcissistic personality structures, explains that narcissists live in a fragile psychological ecosystem built entirely on external validation. Their sense of self-worth isn't internally generated, it's borrowed. So when their primary source of validation, withdraws, the entire ecosystem collapses. This is why their reinvention phase is not healing, it's survival. It's a desperate attempt to reconstruct identity before the inner void consumes them. Inside that void lies terror, pure existential panic. Many narcissists experience what psychologists call narcissistic mortification, a psychological implosion triggered when the carefully constructed self-image is shattered. To them, being abandoned or rejected doesn't feel like a breakup. It feels like psychological annihilation. They don't just lose you, they lose the illusion of control, the fantasy that they are superior, desired, untouchable. That illusion is their oxygen. When it's gone, they suffocate emotionally. But here's the cruel paradox. Instead of seeking genuine help or self-awareness, they often accelerate the illusion. They double down on image maintenance. They may post more glamorous updates, brag about success, or flaunt new relationships. It's an unconscious strategy of self-preservation. As Dr. Ramani Durvasula puts it, the narcissist's ego is a house of cards. When one card falls, they frantically build another tower before anyone notices the collapse. Meanwhile, the survivor watches from afar, confused, heartbroken, and haunted by the display of their happiness. This is where many victims begin to question themselves. Were they ever real with me? Did I matter? Did they even feel anything at all? Psychologists affirm that this confusion is not accidental. It's part of the trauma bond. Narcissists train their victims to seek their approval, to measure their worth through the narcissist's reactions. So even after leaving, survivors often find themselves scanning for signs that the narcissist still cares. But the truth is, every performance the narcissist puts on is a shield against the humiliation of being seen as ordinary, human, or broken. The path to recovery begins with one painful but liberating realization. Their behavior is not about you. Their need for new supply, their sudden detachment, their cold reinvention. All of it is a reflection of their inner fragmentation. You were never too much or not enough. You were simply real in a world that demands illusion. Therapists who work with survivors of narcissistic abuse often recommend a process called radical detachment. This doesn't mean indifference. It means reclaiming the emotional energy that has been siphoned away. When you stop watching, stop comparing, stop reacting, you cut off the supply of psychological energy that fuels the narcissist's fantasy. You begin to turn inward, rebuilding your identity not through someone else's gaze, but through your own self-recognition. Because here's what the narcissist can never do: sit with themselves long enough to feel the truth. You can. And that is where your power lies. The narcissist's silent collapse is tragic in its own right, a cycle they will likely repeat again and again. But your silence, your stillness, your decision to stop participating in their illusion, that is the beginning of your healing. That's the moment when the power dynamic shifts. Because while they hide behind a new mask, you are learning to live without one. And that, as psychologists agree, is the truest form of freedom after narcissistic abuse. Not revenge, not validation, but the quiet realization that you no longer need to perform for anyone to exist fully.